Now, the focus of today is to talk about inverse of cube. Now, over here, I got a couple of things to highlight. First, oh, that's pretty bad color. Okay, now I'm gonna want you to highlight this part. This is again the definition of inverse. Okay, this is the definition of inverse. F of g of x is equal to g of f of x is equal to f of x. I'm gonna reiterate one simple request. My request is that you have to know one simple pair of functions that are inverse of each other. Now, it's not an easy task, I would say, because first you have to understand what function means, and then you have to understand what two functions are inverse to each other. So you have to really understand what the word inverse means, okay? And what I said last semester, we'll say this again here now, okay? Ooh, hold on. We'll say this one more time here, that always remember x squared and square root of x as a pair of in simplest not each other. They can cancel each other out, right? If you have a square, you can use a square root to cancel it out. And so this, the meaning of this notation is simply saying like, oh, so f of x can cancel out g of x. And of course, vice versa. Right? You can do it the other way around. So that's exactly what it means. F of x can cancel out g of x. So if you can do that, what's left at the end? Just x. So if you remember the quiz from last semester, we asked you to find out the inverse. You would graph it. We would find it. We would just flip the x and y. And then we also need to find the inverse algebraically, and we need to prove it. So it's going to be pretty similar. Okay, so for example, we have -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2 for the x cubed function. Okay, so we have -8, -1, 0, 1, and 8. So if you cube the x values, that's how you get the y values, and you can plot the points on the graph. So you're like, oh yeah, I know how to do the cubic graphs. Because everybody should be ready for the quiz tomorrow, right? Right. So so you would do the 1 and 7, you know the values. So you draw your cubic graphs, cubic graph right here. And then you know that we're talking about inverses, so therefore we will just inverse the values. So you will swap them and you would graph it. Okay, so if you have the x and y value, so you just switch the x and y value. So you have this. And can you guess what we say about the name of the inverse of a cubic function? The inverse of a square is called a square root. So the inverse of a cubic function is called a cube root. So that's actually what a cube root function would look like. Okay, this is going to be our introduction of what a cube root function is, and we're going to do more later on this week, and it's going to be very easy. Okay. And if you remember how to find the inverse algebraically, we would say what? We say, oh yeah, y is equal to x cubed, right? And then you will switch the x and y, right? And then you solve for y again. And voila, done. Y is equal to cube root of x. So that's the theme for today. And tomorrow, we're gonna find a bunch of inverses. Just gonna get you started with the routine. And then we say, all right, go ahead and use the definition of it. So again, we're gonna assume this to be our g of x, okay? So that's, we are not that confused. Assume that is gonna be our g of x. And then what is that gonna be? Well, f of g of x, right? So f of x is gonna be our x cube, and g of x gonna be the one staying inside right here. And we say, oh, what is cube root of x being cube? Well, they cancel each other out. So it's just x. And then g of f of x. G of f of x is here. And then, oh, actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and make this purple. G of f of x. And then we put in f of x right here. And they also cancel each other out. So x. I guess what I want to say is this. What I want to say is that if you can ask yourself a very honest question, okay, and this is not about getting A's or getting a good grade, okay, on a quiz or test. No, this is just a simple, honest question. You ask yourself, can you say a couple words to describe inverse functions? If you can answer this question, great. And I can be very honest with you, I was not a kid who was able to answer that question because I was stupid. I didn't know how to study math, actually. Not until I went to pre-cal or not until I went to calculus. So before calculus time, I was like, yeah, not thinking right. So, and if I look back, I would like to share with you this little wisdom. That is, we are using words, right? We're communicating with words. Don't you think it's important to know what the words mean? Since we're using those words anyways. So what I hope is that you are able to talk about what inverse functions are. You can say a few things. You can say, oh yeah, you swap the x and y to find the inverses. When you graph it, it looks like a graph that reflects over y equals to x. It's like a reflection over y equals to x. But more importantly, I really want you to understand that inverse functions are the one that would cancel each other out. Because by only understanding the inverse functions, the ones that could cancel each other out, you are learning how to use functions as a tool. It's like, do you know how to use a screwdriver? Okay. So if you know how to use a screwdriver, if you want to tighten up some screws, what do? You would rotate the screwdriver clockwise. And if you want to loosen up the screws, you would have to turn the screwdriver counterclockwise. So that's like the inverse. You want to do the opposite to neutralize the action. All right, so that's the introduction of what inverse is, similar to well, actually the same as last semester. The only thing that's different is the function that we're dealing with is different. we had cubic function, okay, to begin with, and the inverse of it, cube root. We're going to see more in just a moment.